There was only one name that mattered: Bumpy Johnson.
November 10th, 1960, 3:47 in the afternoon. The NYPD answered a tip about a dead slaughterhouse in Hell's Kitchen. What they walked into, police reports would call it the single most twisted crime scene in the history of Manhattan. 8 men, strung up like sides of beef, arms hauled above their heads, chained to the cold steel pipes. They had been hanging there for 7 long days. No food, barely a drop to drink. Sleep was a myth. The second they nodded off, gravity became their torturer, yanking their sockets. Pain was the only alarm clock they had. And the buckets on the floor? Useless. They stood in their own filth, stripped of all dignity. The stench was enough to choke a rat. The men were skeletons wrapped in skin, raving mad, coated in waste, barely clinging to life. Detective Robert Chen, the first badge through the door, swore under oath they weren't just broken physically. Their minds were gone, shattered. One was having a conversation with a ghost. Another was weeping, a broken faucet of tears. 2 of them had checked out completely, staring into the abyss. 15 years working homicide. I ain't ever seen 8 living men crushed so thoroughly. It took 2 hours to identify them. Soldiers for the Westies, Irish muscle out of Hell's Kitchen, backed by the Genovese family. The feds swarmed in immediately. This wasn't some random street brawl. This was war. Cold, calculated, and brutal enough to rewrite the book on payback. But nobody looking at that carnage understood the why yet. The investigation would never catch the real story. 7 days prior, these 8 fools made the last mistake they would ever make in the life. They lifted 180 grand from Bumpy Johnson. And that week in hell, it wasn't just punishment. It was a message written in blood. A message so terrifying that for the next 8 years, Bumpy's vaults were sacred ground. Rewind. November 3rd, 1960, 3 in the morning. The phone rings. Marcus Williams, the vault manager. The news he delivered woke the beast and mobilized an army in minutes. Boss, the 142nd Street spot got hit. They walked right in. Knew exactly where to look. Had the combo. Killed the silent alarm. Professionals, 180 large, gone. Guards counted 8 heads. White guys, thick Irish brogues. They dropped the name Westies. That's the Hell's Kitchen crew, the Genovese lapdogs. Now, that vault was Bumpy's iron fortress, buried deep under a legit furniture store. A ghost location. It held the lifeblood of the empire. Numbers, rackets, loan shark juice, nightclub takes, brick and mortar rent money. Only the inner circle knew it existed. The combination rotated every 30 days. Top-tier security for the 60s. This wasn't a smash and grab. A rat on the inside had sold the blueprint to the enemy. The Westies, Irish toughs, they built their name on blood and broken bones. Recently leashed to the Genovese family, trading muscle for a slice of the pie and protection. But this wasn't about cash. It was a litmus test. Could the white syndicates bleed a black operation and walk away smiling? Bumpy's answer had to be absolute. A show of force so savage that every hoodlum in New York would learn a lesson. Stealing from Johnson meant a fate worse than prison. What the Westies failed to grasp, what their mob protection and their arrogance blinded them to, was a simple fact. Bumpy Johnson's eyes and ears were everywhere, better than any Irish crew, and he possessed a talent for slow, psychological dismantling that made a bullet to the head look like a favor. Noon, November 3rd. Bumpy had the scent. Irish accents, Hell's Kitchen chatter. The arrow pointed straight at the Westies. 6 in the evening. The picture cleared up. A bartender at a kitchen pub, looking to pad his pockets, sang like a canary to Bumpy's people. 8 Westies soldiers. They were toasting a big score in Harlem, drowning in whiskey, bragging about robbing the black kingpin, laughing at how easy it was. The bartender gave up everything. Patrick, Patty O'Brien, 34. Muscle, red hair. Sean Murphy, 29. Tall, lean, dark mop on his head. Liam Doyle, 31. Built like a fire plug, blonde. Brendan Kelly, 28. Average height, brown hair. Connor Gallagher, 33. Heavy set, losing his hair. Declan Quinn, 30. Wiry, ink all over him. Michael Flannery, 32. Broad as a barn door. Timothy Ryan, 27. Slim, face like a razor. All 8 confirmed soldiers for James Coonan, the man who shook hands with the Genovese. 10 at night. Bumpy knew where they slept, where they drank. Midnight. The hunting parties were assembled. November 4th, 2 in the morning. The hammer dropped. Apartments, dives, social clubs, lovers' beds, all hit at the same heartbeat. O'Brien was dragged from his sheets. Murphy snatched, leaving a watering hole. Doyle taken at his mother's place. Kelly ripped out of his ride. Gallagher grabbed at a greasy spoon. Quinn taken from his girl's flat. Flannery bagged, leaving the social club. Timothy Ryan got snatched right out of a poker game. We bagged all 8 of them inside a 5-minute window. The operation was clean, and nobody saw it coming. The 8 thieves woke up around 4 in the morning inside an empty meatpacking warehouse in Hell's Kitchen, a spot picked on purpose right in their own backyard, so they would feel the shame of being locked up so close to home. The place was big, freezing, and empty, except for the meat hooks hanging from the rails. These 8 guys found themselves chained up in a way meant to hurt and keep them awake. Every man was strung up, standing with his arms yanked above his head, bolted tight to the overhead pipes. Their feet could just touch the floor, but there was no way to lower their arms or sit down. The chains were cut short, so standing on tiptoes eased the arm strain, but nobody can hold that forever. The setup forced a choice between arm pain from holding their dead weight or leg pain from standing still. Sleep was out of the question. There were buckets sitting nearby, but the chains made using them a nightmare, guaranteeing these men would mess themselves. We gave them the bare minimum of water, just enough to keep them breathing, but not enough to feel good. No food was served. The warehouse was freezing cold, and they only had the clothes on their backs from when they got grabbed. Bumpy Johnson walked in around 6 in the morning on November 4th. They had been strung up for 90 minutes and were already hurting bad. Some tried to act tough, but others were starting to shake. Bumpy took a slow walk past each of the 8 chained men, staring them down. Then he spoke to the room. "Gentlemen, 3 days ago you hit my vault on 142nd Street. You lifted $180,000 on a tip-off. You thought you were safe because you are Irish, and because you run with the Westies, because you have Genovese backing you up. You thought a black operator in Harlem wouldn't have the reach to touch you in Hell's Kitchen. You were dead wrong about everything." Patrick O'Brien, the big redhead, tried to play the hard case, even though he was in pain. "Johnson, you are making a massive mistake. We are Westies. We are protected. James Coonan and the Genovese family will wipe you out for this. Cut us loose now, and maybe they will go easy on you." Bumpy's face stayed stone cold. "You are going to stay chained right where you are for 7 days. 7 days, no food, barely any water, and no sleep. You are going to sit in your own filth because those chains won't let you use the buckets. You will feel a shame and pain that will break you. Inside your head, on the 7th day, you walk. I am not going to kill you. I want you alive to serve as a warning, but you will never be the same. You will spend the rest of your lives thinking about this week whenever you think about stealing from anyone." Sean Murphy, tall and skinny with panic in his eyes, tried a different angle. "Please, we will pay back the money, every cent with interest. We will tell you who ratted on the vault. We will do whatever you want. Just don't leave us hanging like this for a week. We will die." Bumpy shook his head. "You won't die. You will wish you had. But you will make it. The way you are strung up is set to give you pure hell without killing you. You will feel every minute of this week wide awake. That is the point. You need to understand what you did and the price tag that comes with it. Liam Doyle, a stocky blonde already sweating bullets in the cold, tried to make a deal. The Genovese family gave the green light on this job. We were just following orders. They wanted to see if you would hit back. You are proving you will. Message received. Let us go and there won't be a war. Bumpy's voice was ice. The Genovese family is going to learn the same lesson you are. They thought they could use you to rob me for free. They were wrong. When I cut you loose in 7 days, you will go back to them, and they will see what happens to people who touch what is mine. That suffering will do more work than any conversation ever could. The next 7 days were built to be hell on earth without actually killing them. Those chains made sure nobody slept. Every time one of the 8 men nodded off, their weight yanked on their arms, sending a pain that woke them up fast. No sleep was torture enough, but add in the cold, the empty bellies, the thirst, and having to hold it in, and it became a total nightmare. By day 2, all 8 men had messed their pants more than once. The stench in that warehouse got heavy. The shame of being that dirty cracked their minds wide open. These were men who prided themselves on being tough guys, on being Westies that ran Hell's Kitchen. Now they were chained in their own filth, helpless and looking like trash. By the 3rd day, some of them started seeing things. No sleep and no water made their brains start playing tricks on them. Timothy Ryan, the kid at 27, started seeing ghosts and talking to people who weren't even in the room. Brendan Kelly started bawling his eyes out, begging for a drink. Connor Gallagher, the heavy guy, was taking the worst beating. His weight made the arm pain scream, and his legs kept giving out under him. By day 4, most of them were completely broken. Declan Quinn was snapping between rage and sobbing. Michael Flannery had gone quiet, staring at nothing with a dead look. Only Patrick O'Brien and Sean Murphy held on to any scrap of defiance, though even they were falling apart. Through the whole 7 days, Bumpy's soldiers stood guard over the warehouse. They gave them a sip of water twice a day, just enough to keep the organs from shutting down. Every moment of their rot was captured on film, evidence for James Coonan and the Genovese reps to see. They made sure nobody checked out early, but gave no mercy either. On November 10th, 7 long days later, the 8 Westies were cut loose. The iron came off and they hit the floor, legs useless as wet noodles after losing all the blood flow. They were starved, filthy, and completely out of their minds. Then Bumpy stepped into the room for the final word. Gentlemen, you just tasted a week of my hospitality. You breathing air right now is a gift you don't deserve. Go back to James Coonan and the Genovese crew. Let them look at you. You are the walking receipts that prove. Stealing from Bumpy Johnson buys you a ticket to hell. If anyone touches my business again, I won't open the cage after a week. They stay in the chains until they rot. Last warning. The men were dumped on the curb near the emergency rooms. Doctors patched up the thirst and the starvation, trying to fix the damage the chains did to their bodies. But the hospital staff saw it in their eyes. The damage wasn't just skin deep. Their minds were completely shattered. Coppers asked questions, but lips stayed sealed. The case went cold. Meanwhile, Bumpy sent the mail. Those photos of the 7-day nightmare were hand-delivered straight to James Coonan's desk and to the Genovese reps. They looked at hard Irish soldiers turned into shivering, broken wrecks, tied up like dogs in their own filth, minds gone. The note attached was short and sweet. These boys took 180 grand from my vault. The debt is paid. The cash is gone. Try it again, and the damage stays forever. This is the only notice you get. Coonan was furious, but he wasn't stupid. He greenlit the job, thinking the Genovese flag would keep his boys safe from the heat. Now 8 of his best were ruined, and pictures of their shame were hitting every boss's table in the city. But hitting back cost too much. Bumpy proved he had eyes and ears right inside Hell's Kitchen, even on Westies' turf. He snatched 8 guys at once and held them a full week without a whisper. He calibrated the pain perfectly, devastating enough to scar, but alive enough to prevent a total war. The Genovese family weighed in. They didn't shed a tear for Coonan. This was just a cheap test to see if they could muscle into Harlem, using the Westies as pawns. The test failed, loud and clear. The Genovese brass wasn't fighting Bumpy over pocket change. Coonan was told to eat the loss and shut up. The Westies were left out in the cold. Without the Italians backing them, those 8 men never came back. Patrick O'Brien lived in fear and shadows. Sean Murphy drowned the nightmares in a bottle. Liam Doyle ran all the way to Boston to get away. Brendan Kelly ended up in the loony bin. Conor Gallagher was in the ground within 12 months, his body giving out from the stress. Declan Quinn locked himself away. Michael Flannery couldn't stop the shaking. Timothy Ryan walked away from the life for good. 8 soldiers wiped off the board without a bullet fired. The word hit the street fast. Stories changed, but the truth was hard as concrete. 8 Westies robbed the vault, got bagged in hours, chained like dogs for a week, and were tossed back like garbage, and nobody lifted a finger to help them. Years later, Illinois Gordon broke down the strategy. Boss could have put bullets in their heads. Easy. But dead men are just numbers on a page. Broken men are walking stories. They went back to the kitchen as living proof of the boss's law. You look at them, you see the price. That scares people more than fishing 8 corpses out of the river. 7 days was the magic number. 3 days hurts, but a tough guy can shake that off and act strong. 7 days breaks the mind. The body can take a beating for a little while, sure, but a week with no sleep, empty belly, parched throat, and iron on your wrists, it snaps something inside that doesn't heal. When Bumpy passed in 1968, 8 years later, the wise guys still talked about it, how he grabbed 8 Irish thieves and turned them into warnings, chained a week, released as ghosts. It became a legend. If you stuck around this long, smash that like button. If you learned that the best warning isn't a body, it's a survivor who walks around. As a living example, drop a comment. Was a 7-day stretch in hell a fair receipt for the robbery? Is there a right price for stealing 200 grand? Subscribe now, because we shine a light on the real power, the payback, and the rules of the game. Never forget the lesson of November 3rd, 6 a.m. Vault hit, 180 large gone, 8 Irish thieves made. November 4th, 2 in the morning, we snatched all 8 across Hell's Kitchen at once. 4 a.m., chained upright in a warehouse, the 7-day ordeal started. Days 1 through 7, no food, little water, 0 sleep. They were forced to soil themselves. Minds broke, hallucinations, complete degradation. November 10th, turned loose as broken shadows. Hospitalized and ruined, they never recovered. Westies weakened, Genovese walked, and the story became a cold warning. 8 living warnings stopped theft for 8 years until Bumpy passed on. That is not just simple retaliation. It is using prolonged suffering to create a deterrent heavy enough to protect our business for years through fear alone.